What's up YouTube, Dal here from Zephyr War Games, and today we are bringing you the revival, the return of Full Power Buster Blader. Now, I wouldn't call this full-on pure Buster Blader, but it is pure-ish. The deck itself uses the Buster Blader cards to get to the Buster Blader end phase. The other additional cards within the deck just help support that and make it that little bit stronger. But with all of that out of the way, straightforward and simple, I will show you the deck list. I will then go into the cards in depth, and then I will show you a 1 card and 2 card combo at the end of the video with a little bit of spice. So, with all that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content from the channel. With all that out of the way, ladies and gentlemen, let's get started for today's profile of Buster Blader. So we start off with the monsters of triple Buster Blader with a single Buster Blader Destruction Sword, and then we've got triple Buster Whelp of the Destruction Sword, double Welcome Back Dragon Buster Destruction Sword, Wizard Buster as a 1, and then for our extenders we've got triple Magician Souls, triple Jester Conflict, our hand traps of triple Ash Blossom, and the Spice Touch or Minimal Touch of Dark Magician. For the spells, we play triple Where Art Thou, triple Forbidden Droplet, 1 Foolish Burial, 1 1-for-1, 1 Destruction Sword Fusion, and 1 Magicalized Fusion. For the trap cards, we play triple Prologue of the Destruction Sword, double Destruction Sword of Memories, 1 Destruction Sword Flash, triple Trap Trick, and the very spicy Red Rain. For the extra deck, we've got 2 Buster Blader, the Destruction Destroyer Swordsman, 2 Buster Dragon, 1 Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss, 1 Relinquished Animal, 1 Link Karibo, 1 Protoplant Vertex Anaconda, 1 Crystron Halifibrax, 1 Protector Whelp Destruction Swordsman, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, 1 Blackluster Soldier, Soldier of Chaos, and then we finish off with the 1 Dark Paladin and 1 Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. So now to go through the deck in depth. Now, of course, we play triple Buster Blader. It is a Buster Blader deck. You want to max out on this guy. You do need to see him in the hand, in the grave, and you want to be able to summon from the deck or get him from the deck. So you want him in all 3 positions, which is why you max out on 3. And then technically he's kind of like a vanilla, but he does get those nice little buffs with your opponent controlling dragon monsters, especially when you turn them into dragons through your fusion. Then, of course, you do play the 1 Buster Blader, the Destructive Swordsman. Now, keep in mind that the difference with the Destruction Swordsman and the normal, as the sun comes out, this card name becomes Buster Blader while on the field or in the graveyard. If a monster or monsters your opponent controls is destroyed by battle or card effect and sent to the graveyard, you entitle one of those destroyed monsters equipped it to this card. Once per turn, you can send 1 monster card you control that is equipped to this card to the graveyard. Destroy all monsters your opponent controls with the same type as the monster sent to the graveyard. So it's a nice little full-on board wipe, board clearance, which is what makes it really nice. Which is why you only need to play 1 of it. It's just one of those alternative options that you can mess around with. And then the MVP of the main deck is Buster Whelp of the Destruction Swordsman. This card is incredible. So, specifically when it is normal summoned, this is the only downside of it, is that it's a when effect and it has to be normal summoned. But when it is normal summoned, you get to add a Destruction Sword card from your deck to your hand except itself. You can only use one of the following effects of Buster Whelp Destruction Sword per turn, and only once that turn. You contribute this card to special summon a Buster Blader monster from your hand or graveyard, and if this card is in your graveyard and you control Buster Blader, you can discard 1 Destruction Sword card and special summon it back. Now, it's rare you're going to be using those 2 effects, but the normal 1 card combo is normal summon, search, combo. That's literally it. That's all this card instigates. It's so good, it's so important, which is why you have so many different searches, so many different extenders, and so many different ways of trying to bait your opponent out so that you can resolve this card successfully. Then we've got Welcome Back, the only deck that it should be played in, but because Dragon Link is a thing, is the Dragon Buster Destruction Sword. Now, It's not as consistent in this deck, ironically. It's still an incredibly important card for the deck. And the difference between this and all the other decks is this card actually has to be in the graveyard to pretty much get your full effects, because through your combo you're actually going to be summoning and synchroing and doing most of your effects during your opponent's turn. So bringing out the Dragon Buster is a little bit more difficult during your turn. The idea is that off of your Synchro Dragon, you're going to bring it back from the graveyard, equipped it to a Buster Blader monster you control, wham bam, your opponent's locked out. That's where it gets very, very difficult and tricky, because it technically, to get the full Buster lock and the extra deck lock, you need to put this card into the graveyard. So that's one thing to keep your mind on when going that route, but it's still incredibly important. And for those of you that don't know, so you can type 1 Buster Blader, you control, equip this monster from your hand or field to that target. While this card is equipped to a monster, your opponent cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. While this card is equipped to a monster, you can special summon the equipped card. You can only use the effect once per turn. So what's really, really nice about it, more so in this than in any other deck or the Dragon Link deck or anything like that, is that it can also act as an extender. So while you've locked your opponent down, after you've done that turn, you can then unequip this card, keeping in mind that your Destruction Sword Dragon will possibly go during the end phase because of the summoning mechanic or the summoning condition through the trap card in which you get it out. So this comes off of the fusion, and then you have the ability of getting a Buster Blader to the board, synchro back into a Buster Dragon, and then you've got the full lock again, because then Buster Dragon can then re-equip this from the graveyard. So that's where it becomes more utilised in this deck. We've got the 1 Wizard Buster Destruction Sword. This is just an alternative option. So if your opponent's playing more control in, like, for example, Eldritch, then you'd actually go with your Wizard Buster Destruction Sword, because this one shuts off your opponent's graveyard. So again, you can type 1 Buster Blader you control, equip this monster from your hand or your side of the field to that target. While this card is equipped to a monster, monsters in your opponent's graveyard cannot activate their effects. You can send this equipped card to the graveyard, then type 1 Destruction Sword monster in your graveyard, accept itself, and add it to your hand. So it's kind of like a nice Abyss Dweller. Annoyingly, it's specifically monsters in your opponent's graveyard, so it does work a little bit differently, and it's less restrictive. It is a card you possibly cut, but it's also there to utilise the graveyard effect as well. Then for the extenders. Now, I do have a stack of alternative cards, purely based on if you have the cards lying around. So for the extenders, the way this works is you kind of want to open up your Buster Welt plus an extender, which ultimately ends up getting you the Buster Lock plus a Dragoon or plus another fusion, which could spicily be a Dark Paladin. Now, I've gone with Magician Souls, and the reason I've gone with Magician Souls is because this card doubles up as an extender, but it also doubles up as a draw card as well. Now, there are a couple of cards you don't want in your hand. So, for example, the Destruction Sword of Memories, you actually want it in the graveyard. If you open up multiple Trap Tricks, you can probably put one of them in the graveyard as well. And if you open up your targets off of the Trap Trick, then that gives even more reason to put that in the graveyard. You also have stuff like, if you've already made your combos, you've got the Droplets, you've got your Where Art Thous, that you've just got 3 extenders to put in the graveyard. The other thing with Magician Souls is being able to utilise this as your extender actually allows you to not have to play the Brick of Red Eyes Fusion or the Brick of Red Eyes Dragon itself. What you can do is you send Dark Magician to the graveyard, and then because you're putting a lot of dragons in the graveyard, mainly the Whelp, you then have the ability to make Verte and go for Magical Eyes Fusion over going for Red Eyes Fusion, which basically allows you to banish the Dark Magician from the graveyard and a Buster Whelp from the graveyard. Now, keeping in mind that you need to have a second dragon in the graveyard, which could possibly be one of your links you go into, because if you banish the Buster Whelp, you're not going to have the ability to make the Buster Blader Fusion during your opponent's turn. So you do have to be very, very cautious with it. And Souls is literally here because it makes up 2 jobs, as the draw effect and, of course, as the extender effect. If you do not have Souls, your next best alternative option is your Tenyi Spirit Adhara. Now, the reason this works so good is it is a level 1 that you just special summon for free. The only downside is that you have to have no monsters to summon it. On the flip side of that as well, is if you take out Magician Souls, then you wouldn't be using the Magical Eyes Fusion Dark Magician play, which means you also then need to put in the Red Eyes Fusion and the Red Eyes Black Dragon. Magical Eyes Fusion can stay in the deck because you still have other ways, like I said, to make Dark Paladin. You can also use Magical Eyes Fusion to make the Buster Fusion as well. I believe it's because I'm pretty sure it counts as a spellcaster. I could be wrong on that one. No, it counts as a warrior. So you can only really use the Magical Eyes Fusion to make your Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, second Red Eyes Dark Dragoon, or a Dark Paladin. So they're the 2 routes you can kind of go for, but it was just a spicy little alternative that I was looking at, rather than having to play Red Eyes and Red Eyes Fusion. But ultimately, for consistency factors, you probably put them in. The other card you could look into doing is playing Pot of Prosperity, because your extra deck is quite flexible in a sense that you've only got about 3 cards that you desperately need to get on the board that will then completely lock your opponent down and win you the game. It means the rest of it is a little bit more expendable, which then means you've got more chance of digging for your Buster Whelp, you've got more chance of baiting out your opponent, and you've also got more chance of consistently getting to the missing piece that you might need to complete your full combo or your combo with Extender. Speaking of extenders, the other one that we play is Triple Jester Conflict. Now, this is both a good and a bad thing. So, he requires you to control a spellcaster to special summon himself from the hand for free. Now, you're very limited in the spellcasters in that sense, which is why Magician's Souls is a very nice free extender to do so. So it's one thing that you really need to keep in mind. But what does make him slightly better than the rest is that what you can do is you can turn your Buster Whelp into a Relinquished Anima, which is of course a spellcaster, to special summon down your Jester Conflict. Now, by doing that, what that allows you to do is that allows you to go full combo. So the idea behind the extender is you then bring this down, you put those 2 into Verte Anaconda, you've then got the graveyard set up with your Destruction Sword for your Buster Dragon and your Buster Bladed Destruction Swordsman, and then of course the Verte Anaconda is going to bring out the Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. All from 1.2, technically 2 cards because of the extender. And that's why Conflict's really, really nice, because technically, as long as you open up the Whelp, you're always going to be able to get into Anima. And you're only really going to go through Anima because you're going second or first. So it works out very, very nicely. And then to finish up the monsters, we've got Triple Ash Blossom. This is, like I've said before in multiple profiles, the most generic, most powerful hand trap around right now. Hits Rogue, hits the meta. You could go for Ghost Ogre. I like that as a very spicy tech option, and that's something you'd probably take out your Forbidden Droplets for, or you could take out the Forbidden Droplets for Cosmic Cyclones. And I'll talk about Forbidden Droplets when I get there, the reason I've used it, and the reason I've put it in the list. The final card is, of course, going to be Dark Magician. This is just to help utilise your Dragoon plays, but it also helps you make Dark Paladin. And I just think it's really funny that in 2021, you actually have a way of, in a Buster Bladed deck, specifically making Dark Paladin, which I think works really, really nicely, and just gives the deck a nice little spicy touch. But like I said, if you wanted to go more mainstream route, then what you would do is you can put in the Red Eyes Fusion and the Red Eyes Black Dragon. You do run the risk of opening up more bricks, but of course it does give you that instant ability without having to worry about opening up souls, without having to worry to get to souls, of completing the full combo. And when your opponent is facing down a Buster Lock, so a Buster Dragon with the Buster Lock, which basically says all your opponent's monsters are dragons, their effects are negated. It then means that with Dragoon, if they try to activate a spell or trap to try and break that board, you can then negate it and stop it. So yeah, that is it for the monster lineup. Moving on to the spells, and again, I do have other kind of consistency cards that I'll go through as well, or the only one that I haven't really showed you is Jack in the Hand. Now, Jack in the Hand, the sun keeps coming in and out, it's really annoying. Jack in the Hand, what makes this both good and bad before I move on to the full spells is even if you play the Magician's Souls, or even if you don't and you play the Adhara, what you're ideally trying to say here when you do the Jack in the Hand is you're probably going to end up revealing your Jester Conflict, your Buster Whelp, and of course like Adhara. Now, you're going to want to do that while you've got no monsters on the field, because then it kind of leaves you with Adhara. But what you're presenting your opponent with is the logical thing they would take away from you is the Buster Whelp. Like, that's the strongest thing. And the only reason you'd activate Jack in the Hand is if you've already got Buster Whelp in the hand. Otherwise, you're never going to get this. But then what it ultimately gives you is they go, right, okay, well, if I take the Buster Whelp, I've given you a free summon if you've got no monsters on the field, or I just give you a free Jester Conflict. Of course, if you reveal Magician's Soul straight away, that's obviously going to put them under a bit more pressure, because they're going to be like, I don't really want to give you a Magician's Souls, because then you could send spells and traps and draw the cards that you were already trying to get anyway. So just by revealing these three, ideally what you want is Whelp. If you've already got Whelp, you then want Souls or Conflict. So what they don't, if they don't know what the deck does, your Jack in the Hand can pretty much give you full combo. It's the exact same thing of what Where Art Thou does, but Where Art Thou will require you to control a level 1 monster. So the Jack in Hand is a bit more consistent. The only downside is you're giving your opponent a card. Now, as long as you're not giving your opponent a card that they can be used and abused in a massive way, you should be fine. Like, I mean, if they take Adhara, then they get to special summon Adhara for free. So they get a free summon off the back of that. If they take Souls and they're playing Spellcasters, then they're going to get a free summon off of that and possible draws. Or they can just normal summon Souls and then start sending cards. So, for example, if you're playing Eldritch, then they're going to go, whoa, I'll take the Souls. But then if you're not worried about what they take and you just get to go, okay, Buster Whelp, effect, go off, then you're obviously putting yourself in a very, very good position. So Jack in Hand is a card to consider. It is another budget alternative. It does help increase your consistency, but you will need to play consistently 3 level 1s, whether it be with Souls, Destruction, and Jester, or whether it be Jester, Adhara, and Buster Whelp. So that's just something to keep in mind as we go further forward. On to the spells, of course. Speaking of which, we do play the triple Where Art Thou. This is literally, so the idea behind this, and again it's very, very specific in this particular match, is you need to special summon Souls, activate Where Art Thou, get your Dragon Buster. Normal summon the Dragon Buster, activate Where Art Thou, get your Magician Souls. So you can see the kind of the juxtaposition of the back and forth between how this card works. The one card that you never want to see and then try and activate this off of the back of is Jester Conflict without a spellcaster. So if you've only got Jester Conflict, you don't want to normal summon it, because then all you're then going to be able to do, you can do, but all you're then going to be able to do is search you out your Magician Souls, and then Magician Souls will do its job. Now, obviously, on the flip side, if you're not playing Magician Souls and you've got Adhara, the idea is that you need to get Adhara to the board. There's no point in searching Adhara off of Where Art Thou, because you're not going to have a clear board to summon it. So, again, the idea is that you're just getting Adhara to the board, and then this counts as another version of the Buster Whelp. And now, obviously, the idea is that this can then probably be baited out, so your opponent can ash this. It's not a once per turn. You are going to take 2,000 damage, but the fact is that when you're activating this, you're 99.999% confirming that you're either going to get a Dragoon, or you're pushing ideally for the Dragon Lock, the Buster Lock. And then by doing so, you don't really care about losing 2,000 life points, because your opponent is just technically not going to be able to play. Moving on, of course, the money card of the day is triple Forbidden Droplet. Now, the only reason I've put this card in here is that so this deck isn't a win the dice roll or lose. Now, yes, I talk a lot about the Buster Lot, but the Buster Lot is not all it needs. There is a way of going second, and you can still do the full combo and being able to go Dragoon, Pop Stuff, Burn Stuff, win the game. Now, considering all you need to go full combo in this deck is technically one card, Droplet gives you a lot of space of 3 discards. You're playing spells, traps, and monsters, so you're covering all 3 of the angles to shut your opponent down. And it just gives you that ability and that hope of, okay, if I don't win the dice roll, if I don't get to go first, I still have a very, very strong ability of opening up Droplet and breaking my opponent's entire board to then be able to go off and continue my plays. So if you don't own Droplets, take them out. It's absolutely fine. You can put in Dark Rule or No Mores. It's not as consistent because you can't just set the Droplet, and if your opponent drops a Dark Rule or No More on you, you still have a way to combat them. But it does give you a couple of flexible spots, and it also gives you that consistency spot of trying to be able to go, all right, I now have a way of playing through my opponent's unbreakable board. You play a lot of one-offs. You've got the Foolish Burial, so you want to send your Destruction Sword, because then it can then be equipped from your Buster Dragon. You also have the ability of sending your Whelp as well, because then as long as you control a Buster Blader, you can discard a Destruction Sword and bring it back. You also have the ability of sending a Buster Blader, or of course the Destruction Sword Buster Blader, or Wizard Buster Destruction Swordman, just to kind of keep your consistency going for your Buster Dragon to re-equip and do the full lock. Then got the 1-for-1. Now, obviously, you don't want your Buster Whelp to come off of this, because the Buster Whelp is specifically when it is summoned. But this is technically counts as another extender. So it can put a Destruction Sword in the graveyard, great. And put a Buster Blade in the graveyard, great. It can then summon out a Magician Souls, Jester Conflict, Adhara. And keeping in mind that Adhara, Buster Whelp, and even Destruction Sword are tuners as well. So they can help your Synchro plays consistently, and they can also help your ability to go into Halifabrax. Then we've got the 1 Destruction Swordsman Fusion. So you fusion summon 1 fusion monster that lists Buster Blader as material from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or side of the field as fusion material. If this card is in your graveyard, you can send 1 card from your hand to the graveyard and add this card back to your hand. So again, it's just more consistency. It's a quick play effect that allows you to get a Buster Blader. It's probably one of the most depressing artworks of the entire set. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And that's one thing I haven't mentioned about the spells and traps of the Destruction Swords are beyond amazing. But it's like, oh, his Buster Whelp's growing up, and it's just like, oh. But yeah. And then finally we've got the Magical Ice Fusion. Now, the reason I've gone with Magical Ice Fusion over most is just because it gives me that access to get into Dragoon as well without having to play Red Eyes and Red Eyes Fusion. And it also lets me get into Dark Paladin. And, you know, it's a Buster Blader deck. Like, how can you not be happy to summon Buster Blader, Dark Paladin and a Buster Blader deck? I just think it's really funny, really cool, and really a nice touch. But easily a Red Eyes Fusion if you want to go down that route. Moving on to the traps, we've got the most broken trap ever made for Buster Bladers. And again, this is what I mean. Look at the artwork. The artwork is amazing. Like, Buster Dragon in the back, sword swipe, saving the little Buster Whelp. Like, damn. This is when you look at, like, the artwork cards. And I've got two, so I don't know if you'll be able to see them on camera, but I've got two different printings. One's American, one's European. So you can see, like, the detail in the dragon scales down the front. And you can see it's just a little bit more brighter. And this one's a little bit darker. So just for those that are like, oh, why do they look different? But yeah, you get to send a Destruction Sword card and one Buster Blader monster from your deck to the graveyard. Nice. It's like a nice Foolish Burial. Now, obviously, if this gets ashed, it really sucks, which is why having Dragoon on the board is a nice little deterrent. Accept itself. Actually, no, I think it sends as cost. I could be wrong. But no, it sends as cost. Ignore all of that. Special on one Buster Dragon from your extra deck or graveyard, but destroy it during the end phase of the next turn. You can banish this card from the graveyard, then this turn, Destruction Sword cards you control cannot be destroyed by battle or card effect. You can only activate one prologue per turn. So see, what makes this really, really cool is that you're going to do this during your opponent's turn, which means your Buster Dragon is going to stay until the end of your turn. That is where you can then unequip the Buster Whelp to then sink into Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. And then if you have the ability to get into another Buster Dragon, you're good running free. Such a cool card, it's incredibly powerful, and absolutely love it for the deck. So, so good. And then we've got Destruction Sword Memories. Again, look at this artwork, guys. Like, you've got the sword, and then you've got the reflection of the sword of the Buster Whelp and Buster Blader. Like, I've specifically not looked into the story of Buster Blader yet, because I think it's going to be a very, very sad one. But yeah, you've got to love it. Discard one Destruction Sword card, special on one Buster Blader monster from your deck. Now, it's rare you're actually going to want to use that. What you're going to be doing more times than not is you banish this card from the graveyard, fusion summon one Buster Blader, the Dragon Destruction Swordsman, from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials listed on it from the graveyard. So, this sends the Buster Blader. So, you go normal summon Whelp. Whelp searches this. Activate this during your opponent's turn. This will then send as cost the Destruction Sword card and your Buster Blader. So, in your graveyard, you've got this plus the 2. This gives you the Buster Dragon. You then banish this to then banish the Buster Blader and the Whelp in the graveyard, and keeps you out your Buster Blader. And it's just like, cool, you've got a nice little soft Buster Blader lock there, and all you need to do is get the Destruction Sword to the graveyard, and you're good and golden to like lock the full thing down. The last Buster Blader card itself is Destruction Sword Flash. Now, I wish I had a second one of this. I don't know where it is. I'm going to have to dig through my comments. So if you control a fusion monster that lists Buster Blader as material, banish all monsters your opponent controls. When a card or effect is activated that targets a Buster Blader monster or monsters you control except during a damage step, banish this card from the graveyard, negate the effect, and if you do, destroy that card. Now, as an alternative or as an addition to Splash, I also play Double Red Rain. And what I love about this card is you're always consistently, if you go combo, you're always consistently going to be able to resolve this. So if you control a level 8 or higher Synchro monster, which your Buster Dragon is, which is a beautiful as it is level 8, banish all monsters on the field except the monsters with the highest level. Now, your Buster Dragon is an 8, your Destruction Swordman is an 8, your Dragoon is an 8. So the only thing that you're actually going to get rid of is going to be your Verte Anaconda. The remaining face-up monsters on the field, and this is where it's very important. So banish all monsters on the field except monsters with the highest level. So because it says except monsters with the highest level, if they don't have a level, they're technically not the highest level. So they banish everything else apart that. So the only downside is if your opponent has a level 8 on board, they're going to keep it, but it's very rare that's going to happen. But what makes this a little bit better, in my opinion, than Destruction Sword, apart from the fact this is easily searchable, is also the remaining face-up monsters on the field are unaffected by other card effects except their own. So your Dragoon becomes unaffected, your Buster Dragon becomes unaffected, and then of course your Destruction Sword becomes unaffected. It's like, nice, I've got a full-on protection barrier until the end of this turn. And then if a Dark Dragon Synchro monster is Synchro summoned to your field while this card is in the graveyard, you can add this card to your hand. So again, you get to recycle it because the chances are, like I said with the combo, if you then bring back the Buster Whelp and then use your Buster Dragon to go into Abyss, you're going to get to add this back to hand. Now, obviously, the downside of this is the second you then activate this now with Abyss, you'll lose all of your cards apart from Abyss. But it also gives you the ability to summon Buster Dragon again, and that will then give you back the Red Rain. So the idea is, and I'll show you it in the next card, is that we're playing Trap Trick. So Trap Trick gives you basically multiple copies of, if I have a second Destruction's flash, then it'll give me multiple copies of that. But it gives me multiple copies of Red Rain, it gives me multiple copies of Prologue, it also gives me multiple copies of Destruction Sword. Now, I'm probably, 9 out of 10, you're going to try and get this off the Buster Whelp. Now, if my opponent stops the Buster Whelp by any means necessary, as long as I've got a Trap Trick, my Trap Trick can then get me the Prologue. And that will then get me the play to make the Prologue during my opponent's turn and go from there. Now let me just you can only activate one trap card for the rest of this turn. Now, technically, I don't believe you're activating, so with the Destruction Sword of Memory in the graveyard, I don't believe you're activating a trap card, you're activating a trap effect. So I'm pretty sure that bypasses the restriction on Trap Trick as well. If it doesn't, not the end of the world, you still have plays to make. But yeah, it just works so well. But 9 out of 10, because you're already going to get full combo that way, Trap Trick is just going to search me out the Red Rain. And the Red Rain is just pretty much going to go, boom, get rid of all my opponent's monsters, and then my monsters are protected. And if a Dragoon is hard enough to get past, with its non-target, non-destruction, wait till they have to try and get past it when it's just completely unaffected by your opponent's card effects. It's just like, bro, come at me, you're not doing anything. So that's it for the entire main deck. It is a flat-on 40-card deck for the consistency. I'm going to quickly go over the extra cards first, and I'll go over the extra deck. So I've already mentioned about Adhara. This is just your alternative level 1 to your Magician's Souls. Speaking of the level 1s, of course, you've got the Jack in the Hand. I've already kind of mentioned this one, that the idea is that you want to reveal, put your opponent under a bit of a mindset, and you're either going to get the normal summon you need, or you're going to get a free extender, or a draw card in the form of Magician's Souls. Red Eyes and Red Eyes Fusion, like I said, this is an alternative that, again, if you don't play the Magician's Souls and you don't mind putting these in, take the Souls out, put these in, and you're good to go. And then the final card is a Pot of Prosperity, purely because I know they're massively expensive right now, which is why I haven't put it in this profile, even though I do have droplets, so it's kind of contradictory. But the idea behind this is, again, if you don't play Magician's Souls is your draw card and extender, which is why it does 2 jobs in 1, which is why I play it. But if you don't, and you do have either Pot of Prosperity, then you can put this in here. And because the extra deck, when I go through it, is very, very flexible, you've got no worries about banishing 6, which is really, really fun. So that's it, just as a quick brief explanation over the extra cards. Now onto the extra deck. Of course, for the fusions, we play double Buster Blader, the Dragon Destroyer Swordsman. Beautiful. Beautiful. Again, artwork stunning, can't really complain about this. But it requires 1 Buster Blader plus 1 Dragon type monster, so generic. Must be fusion summoned and cannot be special summoned by other ways. This card cannot attack directly. This card gains 1,000 attack and defense for each Dragon type monster your opponent controls or is in their graveyard. Change all Dragon type monsters your opponent controls monsters your opponent controls to defense position. Also, Dragon type monsters in your opponent's possession cannot activate their effects. If this card attacks a defense position monster, inflict piercing battle damage to that opponent. So, why is this so good? Well, he combos off amazingly with his good old pet, Buster Dragon. Now, Buster Dragon pretty much makes all of those effects completely live. This sun is killing me. So, it requires 1 tuner or 1 or more non-tuners. And again, you're going to be bringing this out off the trap card anyway. All monsters your opponent controls become Dragon type. Once per turn, if you do not control a Buster Blader monster, you can type 1 Buster Blader in your graveyard and special summon it. Once per turn, during your opponent's turn, you can type 1 Buster Blader monster you control, equip it with 1 Destruction Sword monster from your graveyard. This is a quick effect. So, Buster Blader you control, you've got a Destruction Sword in the graveyard, effect to equip, full-on extra deck lockout. These cards are incredible. There's a reason. I think this has only had 1 print. It's stupid high right now, but I love the deck. The deck is so strong with this combo. It's unreal. Looking at the other fusions, we've got the 1 Dragoon, standard, what it is, and the 1 Dark Paladin. Now, the Dark Paladin can easily become a second Dragoon, especially if you put the Red Eyes in there, because keep in mind, you then play Magical Eyes Fusion still, because Red Eyes Fusion sends them to the graveyard, Magical Eyes Fusion can then banish them from the graveyard, and if your opponent's already under a Buster Lock and they can't get past your Verti Anaconda, you can then use Verti Anaconda during the next turn. Now the only downside is if you activate Where Art Thou and Verti Anaconda, you're going to be burning yourself for 4,000 life points. You're already making your opponent's job so much easier for them, but it is an alternative. Paladin, what I love about this is it's just the fact I can play Paladin in Buster Blader. I can play Paladin and Dark Magician not as consistently, but I can actually consistently play it in this. The only other synchro, and then we'll go over the links, is the Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Abyss. So it requires one tuner plus one or more non-tuner Dark Dragon synchro type. Boom, there you go. So, like we saw with the Destruction Swords or the Buster Whelps, they can unequip themselves. So during your opponent's turn, keeping in mind this dies in the end phase, you unequip the Buster Whelp. The Buster Whelp then synchros with the Buster Dragon, makes the Abyss. Abyss gives you a nice little bit of an Omni Negate. 3,200, plus you've already got this guy. Keep in mind he can't attack directly, but you also have further plays from that. Then if you get another Buster Dragon, you just sit on Buster Dragon, and all you've done is you've upgraded your first Buster Dragon into this guy, and then your second Buster Dragon is still going to complete the lock for your opponent. On to the Link cards. Link Karibo and Relinquish Anima both come off of Buster Whelp. Karibo is the defensive option if you don't have, because you need Buster Whelp in the graveyard to fulfill the full combo. You can't leave it on the board. Now, you'd go Relinquish Anima if you've opened up your extender in Jester Convict. You would go Link Karibo if you haven't, and you've only got the ability to go Buster Lock rather than Buster Lock +1. Relinquish Anima is also incredibly good going second, because even if you side in Kaijus, you Kaiju them, put it to a zone in front of the Link markers, and then you just go, okay, Anima, summon it, steal it, and you haven't got to worry about a big boss monster ever again on that board. And then Link Karibo is, of course, has that nice defensive option to tribute itself off, and off you go. One other thing that I should possibly mention as well is that because the way the deck is built and it turns everything to dragons, you can very, very easily play Super Poly, and then what you can do is you can go into the Rocket, the Borreload Furious Dragon, because it requires 2 dragons, or you can go into like anything that requires just 2 dragons. You just go, okay, Super Poly, clear up board. So then even if your opponent like tries to normal summon a monster or tries to play through or whatever, Super Poly can become an additional deterrent, especially when you've got the Buster Dragon on the board, and it's just a nice little option. For the other Link monsters, of course, we got the Predaplant Verti Anaconda, Crystron Halley Firebrax, and the Destruction Whelp, Protector Whelp, sorry, of Destruction Sword. Now, the reason we've got Verti Anaconda is pretty much clear. You're going to be making this as part of your combo to consistently get into a Dragoon and or Paladin, Morley Dragoon. And then, of course, the Crystron Halley Firebrax, what makes him so good is throughout the combo, even if you don't make a... even if you don't change the Buster Whelp, because it's a tuner, what you can do is you go Extender plus Buster Whelp, go into Halley Firebrax first. Halley Firebrax will special summon from the deck the Buster Whelp, the Destruction Sword, and then you link the Destruction Sword with Halley Firebrax to go into Verti Anaconda, and that's already set up your graveyard to do the full Buster Lock with Dragoon. So you're going to end up with a Dragoon, a Buster Blade, a Destruction Swordsman, a Buster Dragon, and you're then going to lock them out of the extra deck. So your opponent is very, very pretty much not going to be able to play the game. Protector Whelp, what makes this so good is it is another way of Link 2 being able to set up the graveyard for a Destruction Sword. But keep in mind, it requires 2 monsters, so it's nice and generic. If this card is Link summoned, you can send 1 Destruction Sword card from your deck to the graveyard. Then you can special summon 1 Buster Blade monster from your hand. Now, you can, so you don't have to. If you have a Buster Blade, it's a nice free extender. At the end of your battle phase, if your opponent controls no monsters, you can target 1 Buster Blade monster you control that did not declare an attack this turn. Inflict damage to your opponent equal to the monster's attack. Only use each effect once per turn. Now, the reason this is so good is that your Buster Blade of Fusion can't attack directly. So the plan is, all of your other cards clear your opponent's board off, and your opponent will be open for a direct attack of 2,800, and they're like, well, you can't attack with that, so whatever. You go, fine. Main phase 2, make this Effective Protector Whelp. So you can use the 2 monsters. So let's say you've got Buster Dragon and Dragoon. Use Buster Dragon and Dragoon, make this. Because then this can then target the Fusion that hasn't attacked and then burn your opponent for 28. And it's just like, GG, bro. Buster Blader is the master. Cool. Moving on, of course, we've got the Nightmare Phoenix, the Nightmare Unicorn. Not much more needs to be said of that. And very little needs to be said about the Blackluster Soldier of Chaos. Is what it is. I mean, your Buster Blade is level 7, your Dark Magician is level 7, your Fusions are level 7s or higher. Your Buster Dragon is level 7s or higher. So this is probably your best Link boss monster that you could possibly make, because it pretty much just goes Okay, can't be targeted, can't be destroyed. Let's go, bro. Another option is you can easily put in an IP Masquerena in this. No worries whatsoever. But this is where the flex spots come. So the only cards you really care about to get your full combo going are these three right here. Everything else is just additional extenders on top of that. So the Abyss is your second turn play. So you still got 6 you want to banish. So if you go, right, okay, well, let's say I've used Relinquish Anima, Dark Paladin, easy banish fodder, BLS, easy banish fodder, Nightmare Unicorn, easy banish fodder, Phoenix, easy banish fodder, Link Karibo could be in an easy banish fodder. So could your Protector Whelp if you think you've already got game on board. So could Halley Firebrax. You've just got so much free space that you can move around that playing Pot Prosperity is a very, very good and poignant option. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to zoom out and I'm going to show you quickly the 2 combos. So the one card combo and then just how you adapt that with an extender to pretty much get the nuts. Combo number 1 card combo. All you need is Buster Welt and hope your opponent doesn't have an Asher or a Veiler. Combo number 2, all you need to do is add to this hand some form of an extender, even in the form of Adhara. Or even a Where Art Thou to then get one of these, so you've got the consistent ability to make it. Now, the one thing that makes this even better is you can set up the full Buster Lock with a 2-card combo, and I'll show you that in a minute. So, all you're going to do is you're going to normal summon your Buster Welt of Destruction Sword. That will then trigger the effect to let you add your prologue of the Destruction Swordsman. You then get this in the graveyard by going into a Link monster, and like I said, the best defensive one, if this is all you got, is the Link Karibo. If you don't already have this and you've got something else to play. And then during your opponent's turn, flip the prologue. Prologue will send as cost your Buster Blader and a Destruction Sword, which will be your Destruction Sword of Memories. That will then synchro summon out your Buster Dragon, making all your opponent's monsters dragons. And then you can straight away banish the Destruction Sword, which will banish your Buster Blader and your Buster Whelp, to give you your Buster Dragon Destruction Sword. And that's it. Your opponent now have all dragons. Your opponent's dragon monsters are shift to defense. Your opponent's dragon monsters they control cannot activate their effects. Soft, lock, done. Now, resetting the board state slightly, this is how you change it and you open up the nuts and pretty much wreck your opponent's day. So, we're going to open up with the nuts. This one specifically we're going to use Magician Souls because we do need to, because of the way the deck's built, you actually, you want Magician Souls. Now obviously to make it a bit more consistent, you want anything you want, and then that sends your Verte for the Red Ice Fusion. So, what we're going to do here, normal summon the Buster Whelp, you can try and bait your opponent out with Souls first, entirely up to you. That will then add you your prologue. You then activate Magician Souls. Magician Souls will then send from the deck to the graveyard. Dark Magician. And this is where you'll specifically might need another Buster Dragon to give you the full lock. But you can pretty much set that up now. So what you want to do here is you want to link these two together. And you want to go into Halley Firebrax. Halley Firebrax will then use his effect to special out the Destruction Sword. And then what you're going to do here is you're going to link the Destruction Sword with your Christian Halley Firebrax. You're going to go into Verte Anaconda, wherever he is. There we go. Verte Anaconda will then trigger the effect to send Magical Ice Fusion, or if you want to get the full lock, you would send Red Ice Fusion. Where are you? Magical Ice. You send Magical Ice Fusion. Off of Magical Ice Fusion, of course, you're going to banish your Dark Magician, and then you'd banish your Buster Whelp. It doesn't really matter which one you banish, because both of them, the Buster Whelps are both going to get banished in this scenario. That stays. That then gives you your Dragoon, which is only going to have 1 pop, but you still have the negate, and as long as you've got a card in the hand, which should do from an open hand of 5, you're going to be able to do that. And then during your opponent's turn, you flip the prologue. The prologue will send the Destruction Sword of Memory and the Buster Blader, and that will give you your Buster Dragon. There you go. And then you'd banish the Destruction Sword of Memory, banishing your Buster Blader, and of course your Destruction Sword that you sent. And that will then make your Buster Blader. So then you've got Dragoon, you've got Buster Lock, and then if you wanted to make this a harder lock, that is where the Red Ice Fusion becomes in more clutch. But obviously the idea behind this is you should have another dragon and you're just going to ditch the grave or get rid of at all. If you don't, then the idea is you're going to go for Red Ice Fusion. Red Ice Fusion would not need to banish the Buster Whelp to make this. The Buster Whelp would stay in the grave. And then what you do is during your opponent's turn, you can again do the full combo, use the effect of the dragon to equip this with this. Your opponent, you now have a negate to protect all your stuff. You now have all your opponent's monsters becoming dragons, being shifted to defense and having their effects negated, and they can't access the extra deck. And then if your opponent really wanted to try it, what you could do is, I believe this one, where you go, this one is now in the graveyard. So you can banish this from the graveyard, and then Destruction Sword cards you control cannot be destroyed by battle card effects. You banish that, protects this, and then your opponent's like, yeah, cool, I guess I can't do anything, so I'll pass. And then if they pass to you, this is going to die during the end phase of this turn. So you draw a random card. You can then unequip the Buster Whelp, sync these two together, go into Hot Red Dragon, and then you pretty much go boom. Now again, this is another example, whereas if you use Red Ice Fusion over the Magical Ice Fusion, you could then play Verte again, and then Verte can then banish the Dark Magician and Red Ice to either make a second Dragoon, not that you should need it, or just for spice reasons, a Dark Paladin. And you're like, yeah boy, Dark Paladin in 2021. So yeah, if you want to make it more competitive, more consistently, you'll put the Red Ice Fusion in. I just wanted to be a little bit spicy, a little bit different than the norm, and I wanted to show that I can play Paladin in 2021. But that is it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this combo, I hope this video, I hope the in-depth explanations kind of helped you, and can really help you put Buster Blades together, because the deck can operate very, very well. The only issue, which is what keeps it out of being like top tier or meta, is the fact that they rely so heavily on Buster Whelp. They've not got like 50 combos, like 51 card combos to get them where they need to. They've only got one card to get them there, which is why they need to play searches to get to it. And if it gets stopped by Vela, Imperm, or Ash, then they kind of go, they fold in on themselves. But yeah, it's a very, very nice option, very, very nice deck. Definitely rogue, and will definitely kick some butt if played correctly. But for now, as absolutely always, guys, stay safe and happy dueling.